Great. And yeah, so for those of you who are joining us for the first time, welcome. And for those of you who have been members and supporters of PAC, thank you so much. We are mostly a volunteer organization and established in 2019. My name is Salome Tabrizi. I'm one of the founding members of the Psychedelic Association of Canada. And we would not be an organization without the support and help of, first and foremost, our two main paid positions, Cheryl being our community manager and lady with many talents, and then Jay, our executive director, who is also an incredible source of support and creation of momentum for our organization. The PAC board is a volunteer board, and we all come in with different experiences and ways of expertise. And and plant medicine as a human right, access to it as a human right. And that's one of the main values of the Psychedelic Association of Canada. Of course, we work in advocacy and education. And if I'm in Costa Rica, I live in Costa Rica, and if my video is a bit choppy or if it cuts out, Cheryl will jump in and she'll support you guys with the questions and answers. So we can just begin. So, this is the second part of the webinar. We put the first one on with the intention of sharing more about sexual healing and sexual safety and empowerment. For myself, this is a conversation that's very dear to my heart. Reflecting on it even last night, I was thinking about sexual energy as the life force and the creative energy in our world, and how important it is to really reclaim and regain this energy as we are creating or hoping to create different ways of living and harmonious ways of being in our own bodies, but also with the external reality of relationships and nature, and really the calling of our times. And I just want to say that for those of you who are joining today, to really take this, because the first conversation that we had was quite activating for a lot of people. We got a lot of great feedback of how it impacted individuals. And so as you're tuning into your own awareness and your own body with the different discussion points that come up, just continue to breathe and notice somatically what's coming up for you as we discuss these different perspectives. And I think also I want to just say that this, us being together right now, and for those of you who will be watching the replay afterwards, to really have the intention to set this out as an offering of peace and safety for other individuals across the planet, because right now there is the activation, there is an upheaval, and there is atrocities, and there is devastation that is being felt, and a lot of it is in the root chakra. And so sex, money, and power, how are they all connected, and how can we come back into the place of nurturance and safety, depth of safety within our own bodies, and then giving that as an offering to the world and to our whole existence. So I just wanted to share that from my heart, and I'll pass it over to Rahi so that he can share a little bit more about himself and why he has been called to this work. And then I'll share one of my favorite memories with Rahi after he shares. Rahi, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for hosting, and thanks to both you and Cheryl and the CAD for all the wonderful work you do. Just before I introduce myself, I want to echo some of the things you shared, Salome. I think they're really on point. Sexual energy is really fundamental to our existence. It's what created us. Connection, intimacy, it's what keeps our human species progressing and evolving. And at the heart of that energy of connection and intimacy is our sexual life force. And so I feel like there's a lot of kind of alignment and complementary like hand in hand almost between the effects of psychedelics and plant medicines, which to me is really supporting us in coming into an alignment with our true authentic nature. And I think our true authentic nature is so much about being at peace with our sexual aliveness and alignment. So just to echo on what you shared. My name is Rahi Chun. Thank you for having me. I'm a certified somatic sex educator, a sexological body worker, and creator of a body of work called Somatic Sexual Wholeness. So somatic sexual wholeness endeavors to repair ruptures sequentially. So first, the ruptures that occur in one's developmental years, and then repairing the ruptures in one's adolescence, which often have to do with boundaries and boundary repair before addressing any armor or unconscious holding patterns in the pelvis or any part of the body that are affecting our adult sexual life force. I've developed a form of expertise in a phenomenon called genital de-armouring, which is releasing unconscious guarding patterns in the tissue and fascia of the pelvis and genitalia, so that there's more sensation, more aliveness, more attunement, and ultimately more pleasure and connection. So that's me.
Thank you, Rahi. Yes. And especially thinking about, again, where the first times that these maybe minor and also major violations took place in our own timeline, and how important it is to really go back into those moments and reclaim what was given and what was taken, and reframing that so that the body's nervous system can come back into wholeness. I really appreciate, the depth of work that you do in this way. And again, Suzanne's not able to join us, and I took that as a sign that we could go more into the genital de-armouring today, and hear the information and knowledge that Rahi has working with clients. So, okay. So with the question around sexual de-armouring and what it really entails, I want to just share that, in the first webinar, I let you guys know about my own history of sexual trauma and how the violation that happened in my life was actually repressed. So those memories it happened when I was 5, and then the memories were repressed until I was around 28. And within a safety of working with my mentor, and also earlier that year, I had my first ceremonies with ayahuasca. There was a level of safety and layering of support that came in that allowed for these memories to emerge. And in my own experience and working with my own clients, I have not yet met has not had an experience of some sort of trauma or violation with the sexual energy. And when I first met Rahi in California, it was actually through a friend. I was assisting in ayahuasca ceremonies, doing somatic work, and also integration work in and out of the ceremonies in LA and Santa Cruz. And it was a fellow colleague of mine who was facilitating, and she actually connected to Rahi, did some work with genital de-armouring, and I got a very strong yes to doing that work. And so Rahi and I had 2 sessions. One of them was the main one, which was, and I'll let Rahi share a little bit about what that container usually looks like for him with clients, but it was nothing short of almost like a plant medicine experience. It was around 7 or 8 hours, and multiple layers of opening and insights and catharsis and reclaiming. So that was the first time. And then the second time was more around the other aspect of the root, and it was around anal de-armouring and the energy stored there. So I feel that those 2 experiences were very transformative for me in my own life, and how I was able to access my life force energy and where I was able to direct it, because I now know, and also working with my clients, that energy sexuality is stagnant in the body, into disease. And I see that with a lot of people now when I see them in chronic illness or any kind of injury even. And Rahi can speak more to this. First and foremost, my question is like, how are you connected to your sexual energy? How are you feeling it in your body? Do you feel settled and contained with it? In a bit of a or even fear in regards to your sexual energy. So Rahi, maybe I'll pass it over to you in regards to how you kind of take clients through the journey of.
Sure. So I feel like, as you're sharing, Sally Mae, there are some things that really stand out as pillars for this work. It's very common for those of us who were violated at a young age or had some sort of trauma at a young age to block that out. If it's too overwhelming to recognize when we're children. For example, if my perpetrator is my father or my mother or someone living in the house, as a child, you would literally go crazy to have to deal with that reality. So like our system and psyche knows how to compartmentalize or even block out memories until we're resourced and feel safe enough to address them. So in answer to your question, the first real phase of any kind of trauma resolution and certainly somatic metabolism of past trauma is to bring safety into the nervous system, to resource the body. And I do that by a modality called neuroaffective touch, which was developed by senior somatic experiencing trainers. And the client remains fully clothed. It's on a massage table. And we're attuning as a team to the different ways the body would like to receive support. So this brings a real sense of groundedness and centeredness, as well as informing and giving the body the experience that it is in charge of everything that it's experiencing. So that's like a pillar, bringing safety and downregulating the nervous system to a point where the receiver can really attune and speak for what the body wants. And then we build on that and go through various somatic exercises where the receiver is really giving voice to what it is that the body wants to experience, whether it's support, whether it's touch, whether it's pressure. And so, the body needs to have a felt sense that it is in charge of everything that it's going to experience for there to be a sense of safety and for the armor to start to release. So essentially, armor happens when there is an outer agenda imposed onto the body. And we want to reverse that process and put the body in charge. And we need to do that in a felt sense way, in a real way, not kind of an imaginary way. And that's why it's so important to involve the body. It's almost like giving the body, it's almost like the body was on the receiving end of something, and now we want it to feel its own aliveness. And then after that, if and only if the body feels safe, with touch, we start from the outside in, the outer limbs of the body, and we gradually check in with the body to see what feels safe and what feels ready, moving more towards the center. And we only address the pelvis and pelvic de-armoring if and only if the body is a full yes. So throughout the process, we're establishing consent, attuning with the body's boundaries, what pace feels ready. And that's why the sessions tend to be as long as they are, because we don't want to move any faster than a pace the body wants and is ready for. And then finally, if and only if the client is feeling safe to have pelvic and genital armor be touched into in order to metabolize, that's what we do. And all along the way, what's keeping the armor in place are the unintegrated memories and the unexpressed emotions from those memories that are needing a safe space to discharge. So that's kind of, the practical, like what happens in a session, kind of the stages.
Yeah, wonderful way of really unwinding this process of safety and voice actually for the body, because I feel like that's one of the biggest kind of discoveries and realms of work that we're stepping into. It, or like you're saying, the body's level of titration, level of expression. And I think it has, just even through my own work, because with plant medicines, there's a level of depth. And I always say, like, a lot of times, my earlier times of work with ayahuasca, it was like a sledgehammer. Like my psyche and my spirit was completely overwhelmed and almost taken over by the images or by the experiences. And even at that time, my body didn't really have the anchoring or the support that it now has. And so I think it's a different kind of lens that we're coming at the work with plant medicine now, somatically. And it's really beautiful, again, just seeing models such as yours, Rahi, for giving that full permission. Because oftentimes when we're stacked in our trauma, to really take layer by layer by layer of that unwinding that can happen for the nervous system, instead of another act of potentially overwhelm. And so, yeah, the process of really slowing down, I think is so important. And like you said, Rahi, it's layers of moving in kind of from the outside and giving the person and the body voice. I also want to ask you about some of the ways that you've seen transformation in your clients. So maybe again, giving us one or two examples of individuals who came in with what kind of, again, with confidentiality, with what kind of trauma or stagnation, and what did they step into afterwards?
Sure, sure. I'd love to share some case studies. Before I do that, I do want to say the voice is, as you underscored, so important and so key because when trauma happens, somehow we lose our voice, or sharing our voice is not important. Advocating for our body's voice is absent, and so it is a reclamation process, and the body senses that. It's once I notice once the client has reclaimed their voice, then the body can trust that its needs are going to be taken care of. But it's a journey. It's a journey to get there because, as Suzanne shares, 80% of the pelvic and genital armor she witnesses come from non-sexual related traumas from childhood. I mean, it could be as innocent and as, unintentional as, the parent being disgusted by the child's poo during potty training, or the child is used to bedwetting and is shamed for that. And over time, it starts to feel it's the love being taken away because of its genitalia. There are all these like very, very subtle and necessary child rearing experiences that start to cause a fear of, am I going to be loved? And that's going to be felt in the root chakra as you share. And that's at our core. It's in our pelvis. Um, so yeah, I mean, so two examples that stand out. One, and I often see this, in American culture, and I don't know how it is in Canada, but there's a real lack of attention for the mother in postpartum care. The attention goes right to the baby as it should, but then the only thing the mother really gets is a 6-week checkup, post-birth, and it's kind of a thumbs up that, okay, you can have sex again. I mean, I've had clients who've, tailbones were cracked, or they've had, unaddressed tearing, and at the 6-week mark, there needs to be a lot more attention. So I had a client who came to me 8 months postpartum, and this is after a very traumatic birthing experience where she and her husband had planned a home birth, but she was rushed to the hospital, and their wishes for a conscious birth were disregarded by the doctors. Now, she was an older mother having her first birth. There were some complications, and the first memories of seeing her newborn were these cold metal tubes being forced down the infant's throat to withdraw fluids that were in the baby's lungs. So this client came to me, and she was pretty much cut off from the waist down from feeling. So, the first thing I did to kind of truncate this experience, it was a lot of emotion, a lot of anger and resentment towards the doctors, that her wishes were not being met. That came out of the genital de-armouring. And once she expressed all of this in our second session, she went home and she texted me the next day and she said, Rahi, last night was the first night Ava slept through the night without crying. So it could have been a coincidence that here the mother had released all this anger and resentment, and the baby was able to sleep through the night. But I consider it a correlation. So around the third session, there was an area that was still armored within her intravaginal canal. And when, I often ask, is there a memory or an image that comes to you? And she had said, I didn't want them to take my baby away. So I assumed this meant her birth 8 months earlier. When she came back for the fourth, I think it was the fifth session, we revisited that area. And like your memory at 28 that came back to you, she was 47, and a blocked out memory of her first abortion when she was 22 years old came back to her. And that was the baby she didn't want taken away. So at the time, I mean, she was raised Catholic. It was considered a sin. She had no support around her, and she just blocked that memory out. Now, what's very telling is once she was able to grieve that loss that came from touching into the armor of her genitalia, her baby was no longer colicky around her. And the infant felt safe in the mother's arms when it didn't beforehand. So these are ways in which unprocessed, unintegrated memories, whether it's a trauma, an unwanted abortion, certainly any kind of boundary violation or non-consensual penetration, can get stored in the tissue and fascia. But the process of releasing it, it takes a lot of courage and sense of readiness by the client to feel ready and support and resource in their life to finally be able to, face and resolve this from the body.
Thank you for sharing that, Rahi. And it's fascinating. One thing that you mentioned, especially from Suzanne's work, is that it doesn't always have to be a capital T trauma of, a boundary violation, but it can also just be anything that's related to a moment when there's fear activated within the nervous system, and when there's a sense of separation from the primary caretaker who is supposed to be there for protection and for love. And when that separation, gets into the body, it's felt sense into the body of I'm not safe, then the conditioning of the thoughts and the script also comes in of like, I'm not lovable. There's a part of me that, is seen as disgusting or is not normal. And so that can really fragment the psyche. And I oftentimes, again, through my work, we go back to one or two of the main moments where that fragmentation from self and other, which is the primary caregiver, but then it's actually self and self, or self and source, where that fragment happens, and then the script comes in. And it's really like working not only with the psyche of what script was installed, but also how the software within the person's nervous system got shifted because of that. And so I appreciate that you shared that. And also that we're such, especially the individuals of this time, I feel whoever is really on the planet right now has especially the people who are doing this depth work of clearing intergenerational trauma and doing really deep healing work around their own essence. I feel that there's a sensitivity that we have come in with,
Mm.
and there is a sensitivity that we are honoring and reclaiming and celebrating.
Mm.
And before, maybe that sensitivity was not only not cultivated, but it was actually rejected. It was like, why are you thinking about these things? Why would you keep ruminating about these issues? Just let it be.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Um, so yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the transgenerational, because that's something that's not talked about very much. But we know studies now, I mean, we know now that transgenerational trauma, studies have shown in Holocaust survivors that it's real, and we've known it's real. And given that, if you are one who is attuned to your sensitivity, you might be the one in your family that is really feeling this through the family line. And, we know when we do resolve the trauma within our own body, we're doing it for the entire family lineage, going forward and back. So that is another way that armor and trauma can show up in the pelvis. Other ways, there may not be any kind of somatic violation, but certainly religious shaming around sexuality or the body, cultural shaming around sexuality and the body, as well as the transgenerational piece. Um, yeah, I mean, it's amazing and it's also beautiful at the same time. I think the human body is so resourceful and so beautiful. I mean, beautiful in its sensitivity and its wisdom. Um, I feel like we really need to just create a safe space for it to really attune to and connect with itself. And then its own wisdom can come forward and guiding and leading its healing, sometimes for the whole family lineage.
Beautiful. Thank you, Rahi. I'm going to go off. Still, yeah, apologies when the audio is cutting out, but hopefully this will be better. Um, yeah, I really honor individuals who are doing this work right now. And like you said, the courage and the readiness it takes, because it's not for everybody, and that's okay. And it has to be a calling, I feel, to really be able to do this work. And you mentioned with a woman how much that affected her immediate environment. So not only her own level of safety, but what was transpiring with her baby, and how the baby stopped crying and felt more calm and resourced. And share a little bit, Rahi, and I want to open it up to questions maybe around in 15 minutes time.
Sure.
And we will talk about ayahuasca in relation to the sexual de-armoring as well. But Rahi, what about your work with couples? Because again, we know that how our stress response or trauma response shows up in relationship, it can be one of the most powerful ways of mirroring and growth. So tell me a little bit about what you've seen with sexual de-armoring work and the transformation between couples.
Sure. There's so much to speak about that. I will say I mean, in my work with couples, I see that people are drawn to each other for a reason, clearly. And I like to consider, like, why were these two people drawn from a healing realm? Like, in other words, what is the healing that is, you know, what healing is waiting to happen as a result of these two souls intersecting at this time in their lives, and this time in, kind of the arc of their multi, their cosmological lineage. And oftentimes when I look at healing and sexual healing, there is a reason why these two folks came together. And oftentimes it is to illuminate what healing is available. And, kind of a more direct way of saying that is a lot of times the two people will trigger each other in ways to understand their past wounding in a deeper way. And so, I often see kind of the 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 limit at which one can feel their pleasure or orgasmic capacity is met by someone else who also has some sort of restriction and can meet it at that level. And so what's really important for couples if they want to evolve in partnership is for the both of them to address whatever intimacy or sexual obstacles are in the way, because otherwise it's gonna, like, one person's going to grow and the other person is going to be kind of left behind. And so the couples I work with, obviously they come together, even if sometimes it takes a little convincing of one person to enroll the other. When they're both on board, it's like the partnership is evolving. It's like there's more space and there's more life force space for connection, for intimacy, and for pleasure, because both people are on board. And usually the kind of awakening of the release of armor in one can really support the release into more pleasure for the other. So, there's so many examples of someone who, like, for example, has a case of vaginismus, they fall in love with someone, the partner, not coincidentally, from my point of view, had some sort of childhood trauma, and so they're perfectly okay with the vaginismus. But when the female body is ready to resolve that, the male body, if they're in a heterosexual relationship, isn't ready, then she's going to want, her body is going to be yearning and longing for experiences now that it's open and feeling receptive, that the male body needs to, it's an invitation for both of them to grow together. So that's, because when couples come to me, they're both ready. That's really what I see. I see two people who have enough awareness about their past wounding or traumas that they've done a lot of work and they're ready for the actual somatic release of it, and they want to do it together. And so, yeah, it's very exciting, and it's very, I'm in awe because, like, in some sense, I feel like, well, part of the reason these two souls came together was exactly to resolve this from their bodies.
Yeah, well said. And I 100% agree with you. If we can see partnership from this lens of that it's ultimately about growth and it's about consciousness expansion, then those triggers can be such fuel for this fire of transmutation rather than blame or any kind of like rehashing, unfortunately, the trauma of the past, rather than, okay, how can we really work together in vulnerability and in trust, like almost giving a lot of it to the field, giving it to the source, giving it to God, and showing up with, okay, how does this hurt? Like literally and figuratively, how does this hurt in the body? How does this hurt in the psyche and the emotions? Do you have any practices? Because I know, there are a lot of trainings that focus on couples, and there's the Om meditation, that really allows the female body to receive without any pressure, like you were saying. And then there's like sacred touch modalities where the partner can really, like you actually do in your sessions, is able to touch certain areas and just pause to see what, if there's a emotion or a memory, like you were saying, comes up. Do you have any practices or any resources This
Right.
came up in the last call, that you would recommend?
Yeah, great question. Before I get to that, I do want to add, um, usually within couples, if one person is having a blocked out memory return, or some sort of trauma come to the surface, it's often because there's that resource and safety in the partnership. So a lot of couples are confused when they finally have a healthy relationship, and for some reason they're having nightmares, or these old wounds are coming up. The reason it's coming up is because there's enough resource and safety in that partnership for those memories to come up. And so, I just want to underscore that, because a lot of people get confused. It's like, oh my gosh, my partner now is so wonderful. I don't know why, all of these things are happening in my body. Well, it's because they are wonderful. That's why the trauma feels safe enough to come to the surface. So just wanted to underscore that. So as far as somatic practices, yeah, I'm a big fan of, if you go to YouTube and you Google and you search how to play the 3-minute game, there's a 15-minute kind of crash course on how to play something called the 3-minute game by Dr. Betty Martin. It's deceptively simple, but something I really encourage my clients who are couples to do, even my single or my one-on-one clients who are in partnership or marriages, to really explore one-way touch. And I have couples who've been married for decades. They've never explored their partner's body, where the receiver is not responsible to return anything, to have any kind of result. Their only responsibility is to be present to their body sensations based on what touch is being shared. So one-way touch is a phenomenal way for the giver to not only discover erogenous zones of the receiver, but also for the receiver to give voice to what their body wants, to give adjustments, to say no or stop if it's something they don't like. And the two people learn so much about each other's bodies. I've had couples who've been married for like 15 years. They do this and they throw everything that they thought they knew, out the window, and kind of start from scratch, because it's like, oh, my partner's erogenous zones, are different than what I thought. It requires, a different pace and a different quality of touch and a different length of foreplay to really become available. So go to YouTube, search how to play the 3-minute game, and then also search how to Bossy Massage. It's called Bossy Massage by Dr. Betty Martin. You'll see 2 videos. They're demos of how to share this. And you can explore this with an intimate partner or just with a platonic friend. You're going to learn so much about your own body, and most importantly, how to give voice for what it is that your body wants, how to give voice for what your body doesn't want, and how to make those kind of course corrective adjustments so that your body's getting exactly what it wants. So those are 2 practices. And then I teach something around the body's 11 erogenous zones in concert with the 3-minute game and Bossy Massage. I don't have a YouTube video for that. That's all in my online course. But learn about how to map your erogenous, the erogenous anatomy of your body and the erogenous anatomy of your genitalia. This is something that we as certified sexological body workers facilitate for clients. And I'm always amazed. I have clients who are like Tantra teachers, and even they learn more about their erogenous anatomy that they didn't know previously. So it's almost like you're cooking in a kitchen, without, some of the yummiest spices. You want to know like your full array of spices, as you cook up delicious meals, and mapping the body's 11 erogenous zones, and the genitalia's erogenous zones are really key to that. So those are some things I would recommend.
Amazing. Perfect. I am, as someone who loves resources and practical tools, those were excellent. The 3-minute game and the Bossy Massage, and also just what you said, Rahi, mapping out the erogenous zone, especially the genitalia. I think especially for females, whoever's watching this, just think about the last time that we give so much space and time, maybe to talking to our friends, to seeking support in the emotional realms. We connect, and of course food. But think about the last time, sorry if it was choppy, think about the last time that you actually just were present with the landscape of your yoni, and being able to, like, I think about it, now at the age of 40, how neglected that area has been for me, from my own awareness and my own love. Of course, in a sacred partnership, there's attention and affection, and but thinking about all of the layers, and it's the lingam and the yoni are the most sensitive.
Yeah. Yeah, the female clitoris is the only part of the body that is designed for pleasure. And which is great, but it's like when I work with couples, they kind of go to I mean, their go-to is the clitoris and the G spot, but they don't really explore the posterior fornix, the anterior annex, or the cervix, which is the only part of the female anatomy that engages, the vagus nerve, the pelvic nerve, the hypogastric nerve. So they're used to having pudendal nerve-based clitoral orgasms, but not the full body cervical orgasms. Or for men, essentially it's the shaft, that or the testicles that people go for. They don't really fully explore the frenulum or the corona, or putting pressure on the prostate, or much less direct prostate contact. And so, and then, here we're talking about the genitalia, really the whole skin of the body is the biggest erogenous zone. And that's why I really start with the 11 erogenous zones of the body, the back of the neck, the ears, the back of the knees, the lower belly. Like, this is really what gets the body warmed up for the genitalia to be ready. And I will also say, in that process, it gets revealed where there is armor. Like, if there isn't sensation at the erogenous zones of the genitalia or the body, oftentimes it's a result of this unconscious guarding that may have been there since childhood. So it can be both a revealing and identifying process for armor, as well as an empowering and joyful process for intimacy and pleasure.
Awesome, Rahi. Thank you for jumping in when the internet cuts out on here. I really appreciate it. And how beautiful. Yeah, this is an invitation, I feel, to come to the root,
Mm.
and really be in touch with the roots of our body, which is so necessary right now. And then what does that do for our psyche? Again, I bring it back into the way we live and the way we interact with nature, and the more grounded elements.
Mm.
Um, I want to just touch base a little bit on ayahuasca and sexual de-armoring, because this is the focus of our webinar. And of course, Suzanne's not here. We will have her, I'm sure, for another time of connection. But and I really highly recommend that people just listen to the first webinar, but with ayahuasca and sexual de-armoring work. So with Suzanne's work and partially with my work, what happens, and I'll speak a little bit about Suzanne's work, and Rahi can also share, is that there are days prior to the ceremony where there is work, both sexual de-armoring of the genitalia, but also throat, because voice, again, is so important. And the vagus nerve that goes from, the back of our skull all the way down into the digestive tract, and how important that connection is. And so I would just want to really be clear about this. There is no actual sexual de-armoring or work with the genitalia during the ayahuasca ceremony. However, as individuals prepare and get their body, just become more aware with their body, then there is a deep
I think you were going to say a deep awareness and understanding of maybe what armor is present. And then that's followed. Oh, go ahead.
Thank you, Rahi. And I just always want to give like my own example of I wasn't doing the sexual de-armoring work, but in some of my earliest work with Aya, she was already the medicine was already rewiring my clitoris and taking a lot of energy out of my uterus that was not serving me anymore because of past traumas. So again, there's the only kind of support that happens in the ceremony space is maybe a hand.
Like a
Yeah, a
hand.
hand on the ovaries.
Yes.
Mhm.
Or a part. Yeah.
Go ahead, Rahi.
Like essentially supporting the overall body, but there's no genital de-armoring or pelvic, contact in a de-armoring way during the ayahuasca ceremony. So they're really kind of separate in that way. And, based on what Suzanne has shared, so Suzanne offers something she calls shamanic sexual de-armoring, where it's 2 days of full body sexual de-armoring, as Salome pointed out, no plant medicines at all, followed by a day of ayahuasca and no more de-armoring. And she has, what she's observed is the de-armoring really kind of makes the body so ripe and the psyche so open for the ayahuasca to just go in and know, like where to go to really resolve, whatever the issues are related to the shamanic sexual de-armoring. And then there's a day of integration. I mean, I want to say, I mean, it's amazing. Like I've been doing this for over a decade now. And I would say maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I just started having so many clients come to me that shared that it was their ayahuasca journey that either clarified their sexual trauma, like who the violent perpetrator was, or helped them remember it, or directed them to somatic sexual de-armoring work. And I find, I mean, personally, I'm fascinated by how psychedelics and plant medicines and sexual body work can really complement and support each other. I think it's endless. I mean, all the studies that are coming out, you know, point in that direction.
Wonderful. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And the plant medicine, especially ayahuasca, is really opening up those lower chakra gates for the cleaning of that energy so that we can come to sexual energy in a purified and very, very powerful, focused way of creation, what we want the new earth paradigm to look like without attachment, but rather through our own embodiment and resonance. I want to again thank you so much, Rahi, for your patience with the glitches and jumping in. I'm going to pass it over to you for questions, and I'll jump in if there's anything that resonates. But please, everyone, if you have a question, you can put it directly into the chat, and we'll happily answer them.
The first one we have is great to listen to Rahi share his wisdom, expressed with such articulateness and compassion. As a cis male erotic body worker whose clientele is primarily self-identified men, I have a question about gender. Most of the case examples today were of cis women. Is this, sorry, is this simply because women tend to experience more genital related trauma than men, or are they just more likely to come forward for help? When cis men do come forward, do they tend to be differences in the type of trauma or the type of approach you take when working with them to heal?
That's a really, really great question. I'm so glad you asked that because So, okay, a couple of things. So, the statistics are 1 in 6 men are survivors of some sort of sexual violation. And a lot of men don't even know, don't even realize. I mean, a lot of women too don't even realize that what they experienced as a child was actually a breach of boundaries, and that their body went into a people-pleasing mode, or a lot of guys when they're younger, like if they're violated by an adult female, it's considered, like some kind of great thing, or like, it's considered, it's not seen for what it is. So, to answer your question, a lot of men, the problem within male survivors is the silence. The silence is one of the barriers because it's not really talked about in our society. It's not covered in mainstream media as it should, because it is very, very prevalent. So I do work with men, cisgendered men. Um, and I find that the approach is really the same, because a body's armor, the way it forms and the way it resolves is quite similar. So bringing safety, downregulating the nervous system, empowering the body's voice and choice, and then educating the client around their body's choice, voice, and anatomy, and their genitalia's choice, voice, and anatomy. And then the process for de-armoring the genitalia is really quite similar. I mean, the anatomical areas are different, obviously, but the process of de-armoring is quite similar. I find, a lot of my clients, a lot of my male clients are gay men, and gay men who gay men who grew up in really anywhere in America. There's going to be a lot of shame if you're a child and you don't understand why you don't fit in the heteronormative culture. So there's a lot of shame, and then when there is a discovery, a lot of times it can be, I mean, with anyone, but a lot of unconscious sexual experiences. So there can be a lot of numbness that forms around the base of the penis as well as the shaft. And then within the pelvic bowl, the muscles of the pelvic bowl, pubococcygeus, iliococcygeus, coccygeus muscles. With a lot of hetero men, I find that there's enormous pressure to perform, especially amongst the younger men who were essentially weaned on porn and are comparing themselves to that standard, which is an impossible standard. And so there's a lot of fixation on size and performance and how long they can last. And the irony is they've weaned themselves on porn where they're self-pleasuring to it, which requires so much dopamine that it's impossible to recreate in a live human experience. So much so that there are men who are so used to ejaculating based on a screen and not a human being that their body can't ejaculate when there's another human being in the room. I mean, these are the problems we're now dealing with, with the advent of porn accessibility. So thank you for your question. The process is the same, de-armoring, genital de-armoring, whether, regardless of gender, but the issues tend to be different. With cisgendered women, it's a lot of boundary violations, non-consensual penetration. But with both, honestly, a lot of it's a lack of education and embodiment, and kind of, as Sally Mae mentioned, it's like that reclamation process of knowing this is my body, knowing I can speak for my body, knowing what my erogenous capacity is, and being, feeling free to really play that, as if it's an orchestra instead of just kind of a one-note song. Thanks for that question. Sheila, is there another question?
You've got quite a few coming in, so I'm going to start with the next one I'm going to do them in order that they came in. The next one you have is, my partner and I consistently experience simultaneous orgasm when we make love. Can you please speak on the healing and spiritual potential inherent to this phenomenon? It feels like we take it for granted and struggle to capitalize on what is such a potent access point for creative energy and connection.
That's really, really beautiful. And I'm so glad to hear that. So, you know, I want to underscore the most effective genital de-armoring is really conscious lovemaking. And so, you know, it's great to climax simultaneously. You know, not that it should be a goal, because it's great if you don't too. But what I want to underscore is, you know, it might be an opportunity to explore lovemaking without climax. So, you know, climax and orgasm is really kind of sensationalized in our culture. And of course, there are, you know, many benefits to it. And there are many benefits to refraining from orgasm and climaxing as well, and extending that lovemaking period so that the healing energy of the pleasure can continue to expand and nourish your cells, you know, nourish your cellular capacity. And what that does is it expands your capacity to receive pleasure. And what I notice within my clients is when they can expand, when they overcome the barriers to control, to not feeling good enough, and start to receiving more and more realms of ecstatic bliss, they expand their capacity to receive in all areas of their life. They will start to get promotions, or they will start to you know, get a raise. You know, personally, they will have a higher quality of relationship because they're expanding their capacity to receive pleasure. And so orgasms great, simultaneous orgasms are great, non-simultaneous orgasms are great, and not orgasming, but expanding your vessel's capacity to receive goodness can lead you to, I mean, frankly, opening up spiritual realms of your embodiment. So the book I recommend is it's called Tantric Orgasm for Women. It's written by Diane Richardson. And it's really about non-result, non-goal oriented, non-climax oriented lovemaking, where your capacity to receive life force energy is endless. And that will, I mean, it'll expand your consciousness, but also your body's capacity to receive goodness. I think I answered that question.
Okay, perfect. I love that, Rahi, to expand and extend the healing energy and how it activates all aspects of our life when we do that. And we've really seen that over and over again. It's almost like going to the root opens up all the other channels. And sometimes we work backwards and we work, you know, from the crown and third eye and throat down, but really a lot can happen when we go directly to the root. And but I also want to say with a question around the couples who are doing what a gift it is to orgasm together as well. And you can really, again, sex magic and the realm of working with your orgasm manifest in life is also a really, and not in a way of just attachment to getting things, but rather in intentionality with you and your partner. So if you guys want to have maybe just more love and harmony in the home, and maybe bless your community or your children with that. So really setting that intention for your orgasm. And when you do come to, like, setting that before the orgasm, and then during the time of orgasm, just letting go and completely coming into that field of oneness. So how beautiful that you guys have that experience. And again, I know plant medicine and other substances support taking those barriers, like Rahi was saying, down so that you can merge together. So really beautiful to work with both ways.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, the reason I mention this is because I have couples who it's like they're using orgasm as a way of avoiding intimacy. So I don't want to, that's not what I'm hearing in your question, but I just want to say that sometimes we can go for the result, because just being still and kind of swimming in this pool of euphoric bliss can be too much for people, and that can also reveal armor within the psyche. But yeah, what Sally Mae shared is, I'm so glad you brought that in, because that's such potent energy when two people are simultaneously orgasming and sending whatever, intentions you have, world peace, like that is just, it goes into the cosmos. It's very, very powerful and potent.
All right,
Any other questions?
we do. We have another one. I am interested in the view of the ayahuasca community of sexuality. One is supposed to abstain from sexual activity for 2 weeks before ceremony. Why is that?
Sally Mae, do you want to take that one?
Sure, sure. I'd be happy to. It's a great question. And again, it's really based on different lineages and what the and the recommendations are. Can you guys still hear me?
No, yes.
Great. Yeah. So what the agreements and protocols and the recommendations are from different lineages. And, for me, through the work that I have done and the training with the medicine, because sexual energy is so powerful, again, I can't reiterate this enough, for creation. Think about where we've come from. We are all here because of sex. And so when you're going into plant medicine, you want to be as self-sourced as possible and really having all of your energy contained, so that the medicine and you, ultimately the medicine is your higher self and your soul essence, can really utilize that energy to open up your chakras, to activate the full potential of healing in your body. And so that's really why, and you're also not connecting with other people's energies and really bringing this level of because the metamorphosis can happen when you are. And so hope that you were able to hear this. And Rahi, if you want to add anything in that regard, but
Sure. Yeah, I mean, like the dietas are doing like a physiological cleanse, and I feel like the abstaining from sexual activity is like kind of clearing your energy, so it's at neutral. So the wisdom of the Aya medicine can go in and kind of like, it's like you're neutral, primed, ripe, and ready. I mean, that's my interpretation of it.
Wonderful. We have another question. When you gain headway with genital de-armoring, is it a process that will have to be constantly worked on? Or in your experience, have you seen instances when de-armoring is instant?
Yes. So most of the experiences that I've witnessed, I mean, I don't want to use the word instant to think that it's a quick fix, but when there is de-armoring that occurs, I mean, there's so many examples. Like I've had clients who've had clitoral circumcisions when they were a child in parts of Africa, and no sensation at all in their genitalia. And now they're having, regular orgasms, genital orgasms, because the sensation's returned. I've had children who've been, or clients who were prostituted as children. And like, as Sally Mae shared, like those memories are blacked out until they're now 40 and they're in a safe container to be able to address these things. And so, yes, genital de-armoring, if it's from like an event, such as the ones I mentioned, it's almost like that shell covering, or the armored covering gets released. And now here's the thing, like if someone has desensitization from non-consensual penetration, they can come and get de-armored. But if their lifestyle is that they continue to just go along, with people pleasing and non-consensual penetration, it can come back. But in most instances, I would say the norm is that clients come to resolve some traumatic event that caused the armoring, and once that is metabolized, then that's gone. So yeah.
Wonderful, thank you. Another question we have is a cis male has asked, you spoke at the beginning about the link between a human's life force and past injuries. Can you say more about this?
Yeah, sure. Just that, as human vessels, as human beings, we are a vessel of life force, of energy. I mean, I call it life force. You can call it, which includes the blood flow, the nerve synapses firing, like the nutritional content nourishing our bodies, all of that. I call all of that life force. So when there are past injuries, and it could be anything from a car accident to a sexual violation, there is a natural survival mechanism that our nervous system is equipped with to protect us. And the thing about the nervous system is it doesn't distinguish what's happening now from the past. So until it's resolved from the body is still protecting itself in a wise way, but in an unconscious way, not realizing that that threat is no longer present. And so, releasing that from the body is the de-armoring process. So releasing those past injuries, whether it's psychological or physiological, or mostly it's psychosomatic, but as we mentioned before, it could also be transgenerational, and it's releasing it from the life force of the body so that the full kind of organic flow of our energy can flow as it's designed to flow. And that's where I feel like the wisdom of psychedelics and plant medicines have so much in common with sexual de-armoring.
That was a great answer. Thank you, Rahi.
Yeah.
We don't have any more questions yet. If anybody wants, oh, one just popped in. I was just about to say, if anybody else has any more. Thank you so much. Could you speak on degrees of armoring that results from the use of birth control, as well as the interruption of natural sexual completion when we pull out to avoid procreative consequences? It's such a raw, honest aspect to sex that is often overlooked, yet deserves the most intentful consideration and conversation where bringing new life into the world is concerned.
Yeah, that's a really great question, because you're right, it is so common. So, in regards to birth control, I think it depends on, like essentially the body armors when something unnatural to it is introduced. And so I think there's going to be a range of how the body responds to the different kinds of, I'm assuming hormonal birth control that are out there. And so, I think it's going to depend on the type of birth control. And also, all of our bodies are so unique and different and respond differently to different hormones. So there's that piece. Armor that can form from pulling out, that's so, assuming that the penetration is occurring when the body is yearning and wanting it, armor from pulling out, I like in general, armor forms when there's a threat to our safety or a perceived threat to our safety. So it kind of really has to do with what is the pulling out during sexual connection perceived as by the receiver and the giver? Is it perceived as someone withdrawing their love from me? Is it perceived as someone doesn't want me anymore in the throes of my surrender? So it really comes to like any armor that forms, and there may be no armor that forms from it if it's seen as a loving act between two people. It's like, we want to build, we would love our relationship. We don't want children. If it's seen as a loving act, then there's no threat to protect the body from. But, it's going to be, it would be wise to really discuss and be on the same page about that act during lovemaking. Because if the receiver does have a history of abandonment or, love being taken away, then that act can be perceived, misperceived, let's say, and in that armor can form. So it all comes down to the interpretation of the two bodies of, is this a threat or is this an act of love? I hope that makes sense.
It does, yeah. Thanks for answering, Rahi. Does anyone else have another question? We're out of them, but I have a question.
Oh, yeah, sure.
You're in the States, and most of our audience is from Canada. What where would someone go to if they were looking to have any genital de-armoring done? And what are the what would you say that they need to look for in the practitioner? Like not just their qualifications, but what qualities in a person would you say that they need to look for in
Sure, that's a great question. So I'll answer the second one first. Again, as Sally Mae and I have been sharing, like, safety within the nervous system is an irrational survival response. And so, like, you can't talk yourself into wanting to feel safe with a practitioner. You either feel safe or you don't. So, I think that's like the first gauge. So when you find a practitioner that you want to work with, most practitioners will have a discovery call. In that discovery call, gauge how safe your body feels. That's number one, right? Because that's foundational for any healing to happen. If you're going to be hypervigilant and on guard with a practitioner for whatever reason, uh, like some female clients may not be ready to work with a male practitioner. In that case, there are female practitioners that I refer clients to. There could be, maybe you don't want to work with someone who's physically bigger than you, or, whatever it is, safety. So gauge the level of safety of your body. And then two, make sure that you feel seen and met and understood. Like, they understand your issue and they have experience resolving it. Those would be my two recommendations as far as like auditioning or interviewing practitioners. In Canada, I just finished training 10 genital de-armoring practitioners over this last week. 2 of them are from Canada. One's from Saskatchewan. I don't have her website offhand, but Natasha, well, anyways, one's from Saskatchewan and the other, I want to say she's from Calgary. And then I believe there are other graduates from my genital de-armoring training that I think are in the Vancouver, BC area, maybe. So what I will do is I will make a list of the people who've graduated from my training and share it with you, Cheryl, so that you could pass it on. Would that work?
That's perfect. Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, I also have an online course called The 3 Keys to Genital De-armouring, which is very popular. And that's open to professional practitioners and just lay people who want to learn about, the 3 keys to genital de-armouring for expanding pleasure. And the next cohort is starting March 20th. So I'll send you a link to, all the details about that course as well, in case anyone's interested.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, I'm sure some people will be. We do have one more question that has just come in. I have a genital de-armouring issue and my partner is a somatic experience practitioner. Would it be advised for her to help me or should I go to someone else? And this is being asked by a cis male.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm a big fan of somatic experiencing. And somatic experiencing is really, really great in bringing safety into the nervous system, but it doesn't have to do with sexuality or the genitals. So, your partner may be intuitively very skilled at it or not. So I would recommend going to someone who's actually trained in genital de-armouring. That would be my response. Or, yeah, or, if they are interested in learning about genital de-armouring, then that would be another avenue. But somatic experiencing is a brilliant a modality, but they really don't focus on sexuality or the genitalia.
Okay, that's good to know. Oh, and another one has popped up again. Perfect timing, everyone. I have a thyroid that has been exposed to radioactive iodine and has been respectively destroyed. I often wonder how this intersects with my non-verbal tendencies in lovemaking. Thank you for your wisdom in parasympathizing the pace and practice such that exploration into higher chakras can be dutifully explored and inquired upon. I also wanted to mention how when body scanning, in a new energy ways Robert Bruce fashion, memories and sensations of circumcision seem to arise. So many men are inflicted with this primary trauma, I guess infected with this primary trauma.
Yes, it's true. You know, I mean, we know now that there's no medical hygiene reason for male circumcision. I mean, it's just there's no reason for it. And it is genital mutilation. And of course, the male, I was circumcised myself, we all have those cellular memories. And there can be processes to bring forgiveness and love to, I mean, you can see where the color changes on a penile shaft, where the cut was. And there are processes to bring love and asking for forgiveness and you know, compassion to the part of the genitalia that's been mutilated. There's also kind of a movement, like you can regrow your force. It's not regrowing your foreskin, but there are devices to pull the force, like the skin you have over the penile head, to simulate that as a way of reclaiming it. You know, for people who are interested in that, you can Google it, and I'm sure sites will show up. But yes, that's a huge genital mutilation, and you know, whatever conscious ways and rituals you can bring forgiveness and love back to those areas in a mindful way, I think, you know, that can be de-armoring in and of itself and restore sensation as well.
Thank you, Rahi. There are any more questions, anyone? Because we're getting to the end, and if you have that last burning thought in your head before we go, we want to answer it for you if we can. Otherwise, I would like to extend a really wonderful thank you to Rahi for joining us, and Salome is sending her apologies for being in the jungle of Costa Rica. Before we go, Rahi, do you have any comments or thoughts that you think need to be expressed before we end here? Something like a last minute idea or thought that you think that the group really should know before this whole topic is ended?
Yeah, sure. So, you know, a friend of mine, a dear friend, who's a gynecologist, she also holds space for 24-hour psilocybin journeys. And and the reason I mention it is because you can really kind of, the intention you set before, you know, set and setting, and the intention you set before going into any kind of psychedelic journey can be around your sexuality. So, you know, Salome shared how her clitoris was de-armored during her ayahuasca journey. You know, if you really have a clear intention, you know, around your sexuality, if there's a memory, if there's a sense there was something, you know, inappropriate that happened, but you're not sure, or you want a deeper connection, you can really, you know, psychedelics can be a tremendous, you know, friend and aid and complement to your sexual reclamation journey. And so I encourage everyone to really question your relationship with your genitalia, you know, and this was formed all the way back from, you know, as I mentioned, how we were potty trained, how we were diaper changed, you know, our parents' comfort with their own genitalia, you know, what was passed on, you know, in the family, in the culture, in the religion, all of those things. Because, you know, in the same way, like our chest or our legs or our elbow is going to respond to our thoughts and how we treat those parts of our body, so does our genitalia. And so genital health and pleasure and wholeness, you know, it really goes to what is our relationship with our genitalia. So I would invite you all to inquire, you know, gently, what is your relationship with your genitalia? Is there judgment? Is there loving acceptance? Is there shaming? Is there, is there very little intimate connection? And, we go to the bathroom to empty our bladders so many times a day. It's just an opportunity to bring loving attention to a part of our body that's often misaligned.
Thank you, Rahi. Yes, that's so important and probably overlooked by most of us because it's not ever taught to be kind to that part of our body. We do have one last question. This person has had a terrifying first ayahuasca experience. People around me tell me how beneficial it can be for genital de-armoring. Is it worth going through the pure fear of the ceremony for the rewards afterwards?
That's a tricky question. I mean, I'm one that would. There are other ways. So if the associate, I mean, essentially, imagine if you're going to go through another ayahuasca journey and your memory, naturally, your nervous system is going to want you to, I mean, the nervous system's job is to keep us, to survive. And so if your nervous system is going to be so upregulated that, that's not a good setting to take in medicine. So I would encourage you to, maybe explore psilocybin or other plant medicines. And, if that speaks to you. And there are other, you don't have to combine ayahuasca with sexual de-armoring or genital de-armoring. You can just go for genital de-armoring, and it needs to move at a pace that you feel safe, that you feel trusting, and that your body feels ready for. So I'm just big on never forcing your body to do anything that it's not ready for, because that's what created the armor to begin with. So we don't want to repeat that cycle or process. Thanks for your question. That's
really smart and obviously very good advice. Thank you, Rahi. I'm going to start my video now so that
Yay. Here you are.
I'm usually in the background. I'm not supposed to be here, but anyway, as I said, Salome is
there she is.
Hi, Salome. We are just about at the end of our time. Did you want to say goodbye, Salome, or did you want me to take that task on? Awesome. Okay. Well, wonderful. Thank you all for joining us today. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much, Rahi, for taking over for two people. You really were able to go with the flow and some incredibly interesting answers. And it's a wonderful topic. I'm hoping that we can revisit it again. I know that our audience really enjoyed asking the questions, and it's a delicate subject that isn't often spoken about in regular culture. And I feel like it's really important information that everybody needs to know about, especially to heal themselves and to heal the broader world as we continue to go forward. Just a little bit of notes about the Psychedelic Association. We are a heavily volunteer-run organization. If you have any desire to give us a few hours a week of your time, we would really appreciate it. You can go to our volunteer page online. As Salome said in the beginning, it's just myself and Jay who are the only paid employees. We're growing rapidly, and we're doing some great work coming up this year with some letter writing campaigns to the federal government, and talking about education and legalization of psychedelics. And if you feel that you want to help us in another way, become a member. We are not getting any funding from said government because of the illegal nature of psychedelics. So if you feel that you can support us by becoming a member, we'd appreciate that as well. And thank you everybody so much for joining us today at this unique time, and we love it. And thank you again, Rahi and Salome, for coming. And as Rahi said, he'll send me the information, and I'll forward it on to you, all of the connections and information he has for us. Thank you so much, everyone. It was lovely to see all of you and spending some time with you. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.